Greetings, everybody. Let's keep talking about LSD and the experience I had in that world. So I was arrested in 1998, and a few weeks prior to me being arrested by the DEA, the man who was running this show, Rob, was going down to the bay, getting the Crystal L. He was the one with the connection in the bay next to a chemist. He told me that when I get busted, I need to keep my mouth shut and remember that I'm a juvenile, and that if I were to talk, I would have somebody running around looking to kill me. And again, when he said that, he said it more with concern as opposed to him threatening me. But, I wasn't really sure if I took him seriously or not at the time. Because, the world of psychedelics has always had that, a nice, flowery, soft, hippie veneer, right? This is family. Grateful Dead family, Rainbow family, Brotherhood of Eternal Love, selling acid for the people, right? It's all about altruism and spirituality, and it's all crunchy love, right? Well, I met a young man with Rob. This was some months before I got arrested. This young man went by the name of Echo. He had his girlfriend with him. I was with Rob, and this was in the dry time when there wasn't any acid around. He was working in the kitchen. I was just doing whatever, picking mushrooms. And he took me over to his friend's house in the U District. There was Echo, his girlfriend, I believe her name was Loki, and someone else. And I was with Rob and his girlfriend Jen. So I guess they had rented a room. It was in the basement of this large Victorian house in the U District on Frat Row, basically. And I remember the room was entirely empty. All they had were their backpacks and a couple bowls for their dog's food and water. That was it. The room was entirely bare. So this particular time was really dry. There wasn't much going on. We didn't even have weed at this point in time. It was super dry. And I remember Echo, he had a little jar. He had a little blown glass head jar with a cork in it that had one blue 1 milligram Xanax football in it. He just had one Xanax football, and he was just toying around with this jar with this one Xanax like it was just gold. That was the one and only time I met this guy. The way he acted around Rob was the way most people acted around Rob, with respect and as though they were an underling to him. So that was the one and only time I met this young man by the name of Echo. Fast forward to the year 2000, a couple years after I've been arrested and, managed to get out of it free of substantial prison time because I was a juvenile. Sounds like Echo has stepped up and he has started moving substantial LSD. He's been going down to the Bay Area just like Rob was, just like everyone I know who was acquiring crystal LSD. They were all going down to the Bay Area to get it. So Echo was going down to the Bay, renting his hotel room. Someone would come and take his money. He was apparently paying $4,500 per gram of LSD, more than Rob was paying. He was getting up to 7 grams at a time, apparently. He had a customer in the Seattle area get arrested and fold on him and do a controlled buy. So Echo, Nick Echo Kaiser, he sold this informant a bunch of LSD, and a drug task force kicked in his door in his Oak Harbor apartment. He was out on Whidbey Island or something like that. When they kicked his door in, they came into contact with his girlfriend Loki first. He was in the back in the process of laying blotter L. He was breaking down his crystal L into alcohol, putting it in the Pyrex dish, just like Rob had done. But see, Echo wasn't a G the way Rob was. Echo was wearing gloves when he was laying his books of L. Rob didn't wear gloves. He had liquid L just running down his forearms. So this kid Echo, he tried to bail out of the side of the house. The cops tackled him. They take him into custody. And I guess from all the court transcripts that I've read, that I'll provide the link to the website that has the court transcripts below this video, it sounds like he was willing to start cooperating right off the bat. He knew he was looking at substantial federal prison time. So it sounds like he started doing reverse stings. He started setting up his big customers in the Seattle area. He had people that were, buying 10 grand worth of L from him at a time. And from the court transcripts, it sounds like he set up at least 5 of his customers in the Seattle area. And the feds were in the process of trying to get him to contact his connection in the Bay Area. Now, while the cops were in his house, once they had raided his place and arrested him and his girlfriend and whoever else was there, traffic was coming through the house. He had customers coming by from Seattle wanting to buy L. And the cops just started arresting them. Most of them had all kinds of stuff on them, And so word traveled very, very quickly that something really shady went down at Echo's spot. Word made it down to the crew in Portland he was working with, and then down into the Bay. And he tried to say that he had just been arrested with pot. It sounds like his plug in the Bay wasn't buying it, wanted to see his paperwork, and then basically started ghosting him. And the DEA knew it was a touchy thing, So Echo's girlfriend Loki apparently had a gun put to her head in Portland, and she was told to keep away from Echo. And some family in Portland apparently put her in a safe house. And so everyone knows at the Northport Barter Fair that Echo is flipped and he's turned into a federal informant, and to not have anything to do with him, keep away from him. He's there in his Bronco with this young man named Josh Schaefer. He had also been arrested at his residence in Oakland. The DEA basically took him and his girlfriend and their child and another friend as they were leaving their house in Oakland, and found a whole shitload of LSD and what they claimed to be a meth lab in this house. They got a small child. Josh Schaefer also cooperated right off the bat and said that all of the LSD in the house belonged to a particular person. Apparently there was jars of liquid, 40 books, 40,000 hit books, some laid, some not. And he became a federal informant. So when Echo showed up at the Northport Barter Fair, he had Josh Schaefer with him. No one knew who Josh was. And it's unclear if Echo and Josh knew that they were both federal informants. They had both been arrested in unrelated acid busts and were federal informants. So apparently, Echo made it clear that, yeah, I folded on a bunch of my customers in Seattle, but I'm not folding on the plug in the Bay. Because this is a common thing, right? Just like what happened with me, where I was handed down a customer who was a federal informant for my higher-ups. This is a common thing. When you get popped, you have a bunch of people that you're ready to turn in, and it's not necessarily your connections. You're just turning in whoever you can to get yourself out of trouble so you can keep rolling. This is common in this world. It's crunchy hippie love, right? So he is attempting to buy 5 pounds of mushrooms at the Northport Barter Fair, and he wants to sell it down the coast, and his plan is to escape into Hawaii and leave the country from there. That was this kid's plan. He gets coerced out to a cabin that is south of the Northport Barter Fair, an area called Crown Creek. Out at this cabin, there is a family member who goes by the name of Chewey. And there's a couple other young men who are involved in the pot and acid trade with a family. So when Echo and Josh made it out to this cabin, he parked his Bronco was greeted by one of the men who asked, "You want something to eat?" He said, "Yeah, sure. This cabin, it doesn't have electricity. It doesn't have running water. There's a creek." This young man goes down to the creek to get water to make some macaroni and cheese. And there's another young man who joins him down there. While they're down there, they hear the gunshots. When they make it back up, they find Chewey with the .22 rifle, and Echo and Josh are dead and bloody, shot in the head in the fire pit. Josh Schaefer was collateral damage. He was killed because they just didn't know who he was. They figure if you're with Echo, bad news. You should probably go too. And they were right. He was a DEA informant. So this young man, Chewey, who allegedly killed these men, told the other two guys, "Hey, I killed him. You go bury him." They attempted to go dig some holes, and they struggled. It was rocky, and they were struggling. So they decided to stuff the two bodies of these young men into the back of his Bronco with his bedroll and nitrous tank and bottle of liquor and Sherlock and a couple backpacks. Stuffed him in the back of the Bronco, set him on fire, and pushed him down a forest road. Then they proceeded to head down to Portland to meet some family members to talk about getting the money that the people in the Bay had offered for Echo's head. Apparently, $100,000 was on the table to kill this kid. So when Rob told me that if I talked, I'd have someone running around looking to kill me, I guess he wasn't kidding. It was months until the bodies of these two young men were found. They were found by a hunter, and they were identified by their teeth. This happened June 11th of the year 2000. Rest in peace, Nick Echo Kaiser. Rest in peace, Joshua Schaefer. I can only imagine the fear, the deep, deep fear that these young men must have been experiencing from being on top of the world, moving bulk LSD, to being shot in the head and left in a fire pit outside of the Northport Barter Fair. Let's continue later, everybody. Much love.